Alright, we are going to get started. Today we are covering mucking and gutting after a flood. So we're going to get into how you should be prepared if you're a person who is participating in those efforts, what those efforts consist of, and some of the dangers, and how to do them appropriately so that you're not leaving a structure worse than when it before it was flooded. So you're certainly not leaving it worse than during the flooded state.
Except you could be. You could knock it over.
Yes, actually, you could just collapse a structure if you do this incorrectly. So we will get into that. And then we're going to get into decontamination when you get home. Before I do that, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves in case we have anybody new. We are Sanctum of the Craft. We are an anarcho-socialist witchcraft collective and seminary. We teach all kinds of educational seminars and classes, one of which is our crisis preparedness series. This is part of that. The resistance medicine, which consists of action, street, protest, and riot medicine, and herbalism for activism, is underneath the heading of our crisis preparedness courses. You can find all of our crisis preparedness content for free online on YouTube and Patreon. We're constantly, weekly, posting multiple classes on there to get it up where people can access it. Additionally, I did remember to bring one today. Can you just lift up that booklet?
Yes.
We put out these booklets. That's our Safe-ish Protesting Guide. I also brought one of our tarot ones and one of our entheogen ones, just to show people these are books that we put out. If you do become a patron at the $15 and up level, you get sent those in the mail. Anyway, moving on. The instructor that you have today is me. My name is Akima. I am a midwife, I'm an herbalist, I am a martial artist, I have been an operating medic for a very, very long time, several decades, and I have done mucking and gutting. In particular, though, most of the mucking and gutting that I have done was in the context of sewage, rather than after flooding, but it is the exact same steps that you go through. You just have to also be extra especially careful about decontamination. If y'all would like some of my really horrible sewage mucking and gutting stories at the end of class, we'll see if we can fit it in, but I'm not going to take that time now. Any questions on any of that before we get into the stuff we're covering today? Okay, let's go. Excellent. So what is mucking and gutting? Mucking is the removal of muck, mud, dirt, silt, and other semi-solid material that was brought into an area, in this case by floodwater. But have any of you ever taken care of horses? You muck out a stall. It's the exact same thing. Gutting is the removal of material in a home that has been damaged by water, including the furnishings, the construction materials, anything drywall, carpet, but also anything like people's upholstered furnishings, their blankets, their pillows, things that can't be salvaged. All of that has to be gutted, and you essentially have to rebuild a person's structure that they live in kind of from scratch in many cases. Okay?
Especially with modern construction materials.
Yeah. Who should not participate? People with asthma and other lung conditions and diseases, chronic bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema, etc. should not participate in mucking and gutting efforts. People with mold allergies should not participate in mucking and gutting efforts. People with weakened or compromised immune systems from immune-compromising diseases, chronic health issues, or those on medications that suppress their immune system should not participate in these efforts. I am aware that sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes it's your home that's been damaged by flooding and you have these conditions and you're all you've got. But if you are a medic who's going to be going out and participating in these efforts to assist your community, you might want to consider taking on a different role in supporting these efforts if you suffer from any of those conditions. Does that make sense? I'm running into a technical issue. Ian, if you could just pause.
Yeah.
In that children should also not take part in mucking and gutting efforts if you can at all avoid it. It is very dangerous, and it is my personal opinion that they should be given their own safe area away from the efforts to stay in. Anyway, Dangers. Participants in mucking and gutting efforts need to be very risk aware. There are dangers inherent to the cleanup effort after any natural disaster, including flooding. Just because the waters have receded does not mean that all the danger is past. People should not re-enter a flooded area until flooding has stopped and floodwaters have receded unless they have no other choice. If you're participating in rescue operations as a medic, obviously you might be entering an area while it is still flooded. If you intend to do that, I highly encourage that you go get training from FEMA to do it. The training is free. They offer it fairly regularly. Don't just decide to send yourself out without that training. Does that make sense? Don't self-deploy unless you know what you're doing. Floodwater is not just dangerous when it is still capable of sweeping a person away or of drowning them. It is dangerous to wade in floodwater as there can be obstacles, holes, sharp and jagged objects, or animals that cannot be seen through the water. Underground or downed electrical lines may also electrically charge the water, causing an electrocution risk. Contrary to what movies sometimes portray, there is no visible warning of electrified water. There's no like crackling electricity that crawls across the water and says, oh, you shouldn't dip your toe in here. That is a myth. People may be able to feel electricity in the water as a tingling feeling or symptoms of electric shock. If they feel that, it is likely that there is a stronger current of electricity nearby and they need to retreat away from the suspected current source. Floodwater can also contain dangerous microbes and harmful chemicals from overflowing sewage, agricultural waste, and industrial waste. Skin contact with floodwater can be dangerous. Floodwater is especially dangerous to anyone who has any kind of open sore, cuts, rashes, etc. Even if a person does not have any current open wounds when they enter into floodwater, it is extremely easy to become injured while doing these efforts. They're just pulling things out of buildings, climbing over wreckage, and a lot of the wounds that you get while doing this are jagged, and they heal slowly, and as you're cleaning, you're getting those exposed to those microbes. If flooding is in a warm coastal area, such as in the southern United States, where we are currently teaching this, there is an additional concern of a bacteria called Vibrio if the floodwaters come from the salt or brackish waters in the area. Brackish water is a mix of salt and fresh water from where the rivers meet the sea. About a dozen kinds of Vibrio can cause people to get an infection called vibriosis, which may lead to life-threatening blood infections. Vibrio infections may also cause necrotizing fasciitis, a severe infection in which the flesh around an open wound dies. One species, Vibrio vulnificus, is more likely to cause an infection that would cause a person to need intensive care or have their limbs amputated. About 1 in 5 people with this infection die, sometimes within only 48 hours of their first symptoms. So, this is very serious if you are going to be doing any flood relief efforts in the coast. You need to be aware of a Vibrio risk. You also need to be aware of a Vibrio risk if you're planning on going to the coast and going swimming in the ocean anytime soon. If flooding is occurring in winter, working in damp, cold environments and while standing in water can also be very dangerous. Both damp conditions and standing in cold water contribute to the risk of hypothermia. Extra caution should be taken to wear insulating garments and to periodically dry off and warm up. If flooding is occurring during hot weather, working in humid, hot environments can contribute to the risk of dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Extra caution should be taken to hydrate and cool off before heat-related injury occurs, and definitely before it worsens. We just taught a class on this. That content is already up on YouTube. It's already up on Patreon. The notes have already been posted. They're publicly available. That was last week. Because if you're going to be going and assisting like in today's weather, it's 90 degrees out with 95% humidity. We are in severe wet bulb temperature risk. 2 hours of activity in this weather causes heat collapse. So something to be aware of. People should wait until daylight to go to sites where they are participating in cleanup efforts. They should not try to muck and gut in the dark, as this can make it difficult to see and avoid dangers, especially if the power is out. Buildings may also have been damaged by floodwaters. Participants should stay away from damaged structures until a building inspector has had a chance to examine the structure and certify that it is safe to enter. If a building starts making loud creaking or groaning noises, leave the building immediately. Sometimes floods can cause natural gas leaks. Natural gas is odorless, but gas companies use an additive called mercaptan to alert people to leaks, It has a sulfur-like rotten egg odor. The problem with trying to smell a gas leak during flood relief efforts is that everything stinks. Everything smells like moldering and mildew and rotten vegetation and water, and it's very easy to miss the smell of a gas leak. So if you're at all concerned that there was violent enough flooding to cause a gas leak, maybe get it inspected whether or not you can smell it or not. Do not stay in a house with a gas leak, as it's not only dangerous to breathe, it can also explode. Don't turn on the lights, light matches, smoke, or do anything that can cause a spark. Don't return to the building until you are told that it is safe to do so. If there are propane tanks that have been brought in by floodwaters or damaged by floodwaters, contact the fire department to have them removed. Do not attempt to remove them yourself. If electrical circuits or equipments have gotten wet or are in or near water, power in the structure should be turned off at the main breaker or fuse to the service on the service panel. However, if a person has to enter standing water to access the main power switch, then an electrician is needed to come turn off the power so that the structure is safe to enter. Do not ever turn the power on or off to a structure while standing in water. Do not touch electrical equipment if it is wet or you are standing in water. Be alert for snakes and other animals that may have entered the structure to escape from flooding or been carried there against their will by floodwaters. Be cautious also of additional insect presence in damp environments. Flooding brings out mosquitoes in particular, so be prepared for their presence with full coverage clothing and bug spray. Remember that mosquitoes are the second deadliest animal on Earth after humans. Be cautious of debris. There can be broken glass, nails, etc. that can be hazardous during cleanup. All participants should either have an up-to-date tetanus shot or be willing and able to get one if they become injured during cleanup. Just assume tetanus. Just operate accordingly, and if you don't have a current TDAP, get a TDAP if you get cut on anything. Be cautious to have stable footing. Flooding can make a structure's floors, stairs, etc. very slippery. Ideally, wear boots that have rubber soles with some really good traction on them. Lithium-ion batteries may be a fire risk if they have been affected by floodwaters. They are used in electric and hybrid vehicles, e-bikes, e-scooters, electric lawnmowers, and backup storage systems for solar panels. A battery that has been damaged may not show any signs, so if they have been underwater, they should just be assumed to have been damaged. However, they may also feel hot, emit smoke, make unusual noises, or any item they are in or that they're being used to power may not be able to be turned on. That's a sign that they've become damaged. If a battery has been inundated with water, it should not be turned on. Vehicles powered by lithium-ion batteries that have been flooded need to be checked by a mechanic before being driven. Smaller lithium-ion batteries cannot be placed in regular trash cans or recycling bins because they cause fires. They have to go in hazardous waste. This picture is from a flood. This is an electric vehicle that gutted itself because of that fire after the flood. This is what happens if a lithium-ion battery in a car has become damaged. So what if a structure is inaccessible, too dangerous to enter? If cleanup is delayed after a flood because the building is inaccessible due to hazards such as fallen trees, fallen power lines, damaged roads, and the person has National Flood Insurance Program flood insurance, their policy may cover mold damage because it was caused by an unavoidable delay. Sometimes the policies say we don't cover mold, but if you couldn't get in for 48 hours and the mold problem got really bad, the longer it is, like, oh, I can't get in, I can't get in, I can't get in, then they might say, okay, the flooding will cover the mold because you weren't able to remediate it in a timely fashion. Does that make sense? Okay. The person should contact their insurance provider as soon as possible to check their coverage and the next steps. It occurred to me that I didn't say at the beginning of this that I'm not assuming that you own this structure. I'm not assuming this is your house. This is a class for resistance and street medics. So the assumption here is that you're going out to help, but obviously it's also cross-applicable if this is your home. Please note, it is very common for participants in mucking and gutting to sustain minor injuries. These include, but are not limited to, bruises, cuts, abrasions, skin irritation, rashes, irritation, respiratory tract infections, and exposure and temperature-related illnesses. This guide does not primarily focus on the treatment of those injuries. We have classes and guides on the treatment of each of those. Those will be, as we continue this course, we'll get into them. Some of them we've already talked about. Next week we're getting into cuts and abrasions. But we're not going to focus on treating each of those injuries during this. Everyone clear on that? Cool. What to wear? Minimum. Participants in mucking and gutting should wear durable, full coverage clothing, including full-length pants and long-sleeve shirts. They should wear sturdy boots. They need to wear disposable vinyl gloves or nitrile gloves. They need to wear an N95 mask, and they need to wear safety goggles. This is the bare minimum. I cannot tell you how much kvetching Yen had to put up with from me the last 2 days while I was making these slides. Normally we have other volunteers help with slides. No one was available this week. I got to make them myself, which meant I got to find all the photos. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a photo of someone doing mucking and gutting efforts who is wearing the minimum basic safety equipment? I saw so many people wearing shorts, tank tops, no mask, no gloves, definitely no goggles. The one weird thing was that the people who were wearing like full Tyvek suits, no goggles. What? I don't even know how much time I spent ranting about that. So just so you know, as we go through these photos, there will be people not wearing adequate PPE because the vast majority of photos did not have adequate PPE. Okay, continue. Better. If possible, participants should wear water-resistant, durable, full coverage clothing, still including full-length pants and long-sleeve shirts. They should wear waterproof boots with a steel toe and a rubber sole with a good tread. They should bring multiple pairs of nitrile gloves and vinyl gloves, as well as a durable pair of work gloves that they can pull on when moving debris. I'm sorry, nitrile gloves are not going to protect you from very jagged edges as you're pulling debris out of a house. You need a pair of work gloves that you can pull on over nitrile gloves. Okay? They should have a respirator on. They should have goggles on. And ideally, they should also wear a hard hat. Best. Additionally, if participants can do so, they should wear chemical protection suits. We personally recommend the brand Tyvek for mold remediation and waist-high waders for going into water, which they should avoid unless they have no other choice. Does everyone know what waders are? If I say picture of fishermen, do you have any idea what I mean? Oh, good. This would be in addition to and in combination with the gear from the better list, not like have your tank top and shorts and just throw a Tyvek suit on. Okay. Possible additions. If the participants will be using power tools, chainsaws, power washers, etc., they need to bring ear protection as well. If they are using specific power tools, again, for example, a chainsaw, they may need the protective gear specific to that power tool. Chainsaw chaps are a lot cheaper than the care it takes to fix your leg if you cut it with a chainsaw. Wear the chaps. If participants are cleaning up sewage, they will need rubber boots, rubber gloves, a chemical suit, a respirator, and goggles. Okay, any questions on the what to wear? Minimum standard all the way up to best. Questions, comments, snark? Yes?
If you're wearing a Tyvek, why would you need to have full length?
If you are going to be wearing a Tyvek suit and clambering over any kind of wreckage, you still need durable clothing underneath the Tyvek suit to protect you. If you're doing like mold remediation inside a fully gutted house, then you could just be wearing your underwear under the Tyvek suit, and that's fine. And then just switch to the more durable clothing, go back and forth. That makes sense? Okay. Tyvek suits are hot, by the way. Wearing them, you are going to have so much swamp ass. I want to be clear, it's going to feel like you're liquefying in there. You really need to hydrate if you're going to be working in this weather in a Tyvek suit. So if you're going to be inside, not clambering over rebar and broken concrete and stuff, then yeah, you could just be in your underwear in your Tyvek suit. If you are going to be clambering over things, you need to be wearing cut-resistant, abrasion-resistant clothing underneath the Tyvek suit. Yes, I know it's awful. Yes?
This is a little like earlier, like for inspectors. I'm assuming they don't just come. You probably have to like call them. So when you first get to a site, like you have to self-assess. But if you're not sure and you call the inspector, like are there some things that they don't cover? Like do they always check for gas leaks, or do you have to tell them? Like
you have to call the natural gas people and be like, I want you to check for a gas leak. You have to call the electrician and say, I want you to come turn off the power because I can't. If you can, if it's safe for you to do so, you can just turn off the gas and power yourself. If it's not safe for you to enter the dwelling, then you need to contact someone else. Or if it's not safe for you to turn off the power because it's in water, then you need to call a professional. Okay. Alright. What to bring? You're gonna find that my list has a lot of stuff that isn't on anybody else's list. If you want the reasons why any of it's on there, you can ask. But everything that's on here is on here because I've seen someone need it.
Well,
Protective-
this was also the subject of much ranting.
Protective gear for everyone participating. Buckets, drop cloths, stiff bristle brushes, mops, squeegee mops, sponges, dish detergent, bleach, dish buckets, measuring spoons, large heavy-duty plastic bags, plastic sheeting, various kinds of tape, duct tape, electrical tape, double-sided containment tape, paper towels, hand soap, hand sanitizers, large jugs of water for washing, large plastic resealable bags, Ziplocs, Kirkland brand is better, large industrial fans, cheap box fans can be purchased at Lowe's for $25. They're also often donated to flood relief. Flashlight, first aid kit with waterproof bandages in it. You want waterproof bandages. Bug spray, bottled drinking water, salty snacks. Depending on the condition of the structure, you may also need a shovel, hammers, saws, and a drywall knife. Other items that can be helpful: a wet, dry vacuum, towels, just inexpensive ones, you might not be able to salvage these, clothesline, clothespins, collapsible clothes drying rack, an art drying rack if you can afford one. I know they're a little expensive, but they are invaluable for saving photographs, paperwork pages, a fire extinguisher, a moisture meter, a thermal camera, again expensive but very handy to have, a rolling wagon, a wheelbarrow, big steel trash cans or aluminum trash cans, furniture carrying straps, a furniture dolly, furniture rollers, a portable ramp, folding tables, folding chairs, a pop-up sun tent, a generator, extension cords, a power washer and the proper PPE for it, and a chainsaw and the proper PPE for it. If there is a boil water advisory, you are also going to need a camp stove or hot plate if there is no power in the structure or it's not safe to use power in the structure, and a heat-proof pot. If the water is unsafe for multiple reasons, you may need a large water filter, such as those made by Life Straw. Any questions about what to bring? This is why I recommend that collectives start working together and accumulating supplies for these rollouts so that not one person is having to buy all of that themselves. There's no reason why every one of you should have to own a moisture meter. You could just have one. Does that make sense? Okay. Wall mucking and gutting. Participants in the cleanup should stay cool in hot weather, warm in cold weather, and as dry as possible. They should take frequent breaks to rest and either cool off or warm up, whichever is applicable to the weather. They should drink water and non-alcoholic fluids often. If they are sweating heavily, they may need to use an electrolyte drink, a packet, or a rehydration solution to stay hydrated. They need to eat frequently. Small meals with a good balance of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to fuel the activity. Trail mix, jerky, protein bars, etc. are all easy to fit in around activity and useful for maintaining energy levels. Everyone needs to wash their hands before every time they eat and never handle their food with their contaminated hands. Teams should be used to move heavy and bulky objects. Consider using furniture carrying straps and dollies for moving heavy items. Avoid any person lifting more than 50 pounds. Try to work with others in collective aid and not tackle any of these projects alone. Designate a safe, clean area outside of the cleanup site for first aid, hygiene, rest, storing food, and eating and drinking. Rest there frequently. That, by the way, is what the folding chairs, the folding table, the pop-up tent, that's what those are for. Do not assume that there's going to be any furniture you can sit on in a flooded house. anywhere for you to rest, that you can, you know, wash your hands, eat your lunch, take a break. Seek community support not only for the physical stress of mucking and gutting, but also for the emotional and mental strain. It is really, really hard being with someone who's just lost everything. It is probably going to hit you. And the more of them you do in a community, and the more you see various systems that should be helping fail to help, the harder it can get. Some of you, I'm sure, helped with Helene. The emotional cost of that is still hitting people. And, you know, obviously it's not even done. Things aren't rebuilt, things aren't fixed. There's still people living in tents. Special note on children. It isn't always possible to have childcare available to keep the children away from the process, but they shouldn't be allowed back into an unsafe structure. Children need to be kept away from the debris. They need to be kept away from dead or stray animals. Just like adults, children should be dressed in clothing that covers their legs and arms. If a child has to enter a compromised structure, they should also protect against respiratory hazards. However, N95 masks are primarily designed for adults. For them to be effective, they need to create a tight seal around the nose and mouth, which is difficult on children. Do not buy N95 masks that claim that they are made for children. That's a scam. Sometimes they're even made out of unsafe materials. Not only do they not work, but they may actually be a hazard themselves. You want a KF94 mask or a KN95 mask, which is a different mask that do fit children. They come in a size small. Be sure to check reviews on KF94s and KN95s that are available in children's sizes to make sure that the reviews don't say this is actually a counterfeit listing. Yes?
We get donated a lot of those like blue medical masks, which I'm not sure that they're helpful at all for anything. So I want to just kind of like your take on that, you know, because like in terms of like how much of those should we be hanging on to? I don't know what they're good for.
I can take a look at them, or Yun can, and just see what grade they are, because different masks are graded for different things. So, for example, viruses are extremely small, so something might be fine for doing dust cleanup, and not be fine for being around someone with a virus. But if they're medical masks, they're probably rated for virus protection.
In particular, the medical ones that go onto the ears and are just like a strap across your face. The first, I would not want to count on that for significant use in mucking and gutting, because what they're really for is preventing stuff from getting out of your nose and mouth to your patient, or from your patient into your nose and mouth, which is great, but they don't stay on that well if you're clamoring around it. They're really designed for a clinical setting.
Like, you really ideally want one of the masks, if you're not going to have a full respirator, you want one with the little metal thing up here that you can shape on your nose. Okay.
Yeah, we can take a look.
Right. If a child is older, a small N95 or small respirator may fit, but check the seal around the mouth and nose to ensure that it is actually fitting appropriately to their face. They should be wearing insect repellent with DEET or Picaridin when outside. Just remember, so many mosquitoes after a flood. Under no circumstances should they be allowed to play in moving or stagnant water from the flood. It may be contaminated with sewage and other hazardous materials. Another rant about looking for photos was that when I looked up children in flooding, I found so many photos of kids splashing around in flood puddles like it was cute, and was just appalled. They're solid toys, not stuffed animals, blankets, etc., made of plastic, can be easily and quickly disinfected so that they have access to some of their toys. They can be cleaned with soap and water, dried, and then if necessary, treated with an EPA-approved biocide according to package instructions, which we'll get into more on mold remediation. Or they can be soaked in dilute bleach solution of 1 tablespoon of bleach to 1 gallon of water for 2 minutes, then rinsed with more clean water. Hollow plastic children toys are at a risk of developing mold inside them that cannot be treated. You can find out more about this if you look up what happens to plastic bath duckies and why you shouldn't have one. Okay, keep clean while documenting and cleaning. Ideally, do not participate in mucking and gutting if already injured. However, that's just not often possible, and injuries often occur during the course of cleanup, and you can't just walk off unless it's serious, obviously, if it's serious. Keep any wounds clean and covered. Open wounds exposed to the materials in a flood-damaged area may easily become infected. Keep any open wounds as clean as possible by washing well with soap and clean water, covering the wounds with a waterproof bandage. Seek immediate medical care if the wound swells, turns red around it, oozes fluid, is hot to the touch, or if the area around the wound is more painful than it should be for the size of the wound. So like if you have a cut on your thumb, and it's right here, and the whole thumb hurts, that's not a good sign. Yes?
Quick pause to discuss photographs.
Yes. So, we keep being asked if we'll share our slides, and I've said yes, with various other groups. They are welcome to any of our slides, they're welcome to any of our scripts for any of our classes. Additionally, we keep getting new students, so getting permission from previous students doesn't always help with a new student. And I bring this up right now because I wanted to show you all what a wound looks like if it gets infected from floodwaters. I found various clinical images of this that I could have shown you all, except they're really graphic and disturbing. With not knowing everyone's ability to see that kind of image and not be triggered or harmed by it in some way, and not knowing what everybody else will react to when we share these slides with other groups, I didn't include that. I got a slightly sterile image. I bring it up because at some point, if you're going to be doing this work, you do need to be able to look at those images and understand what you may be dealing with and what the warning signs are and how to curtail it before it gets to that point and what the consequences are if you don't. But for now, I won't be putting those kind of images in the slide. I almost did. I found an image of someone who got vibriosis from floodwaters. Didn't though. Washing up at a flood site. If you are using the water from a structure that was flooded, check local health and drinking water authorities for guidance on whether or not the water is safe to use. Sometimes water is safe to use for washing, but it's not safe to use for drinking. Sometimes it's not safe for either washing or drinking. If the water is safe to use for washing, wash frequently with soap and water while going through the cleanup process. If the water is only safe for bathing and not for drinking, be careful not to swallow any of it, get it into your mucous membranes, or get it into your eyes. Use showers and not baths, especially if you have a vagina, to avoid the water contacting a mucous membrane. If they have a only bathe, don't drink warning for water, do not submerge yourself in a bath of that water. If the water is from a well, that well may be contaminated by floodwaters. The local, state, or tribal health department needs to be contacted to test the well and possibly to decontaminate it. Assume the well is contaminated. Do not assume otherwise. Boil water advisories. If there is a public advisory that water needs to be boiled before using it for washing, it needs to be boiled for at least 1 minute and then allowed to cool before using it for washing. The timer starts after the water has reached a full rolling boil, not before. Hand washing stations. If the water is unsafe to bathe in, set up a hand washing station. Per the guidelines from OSHA, we recommend 1 hand washing station for every 20 participants in a cleanup. The water used in hand washing stations must be clean, drinkable, potable water. Assume that people are going to splash some in their hands, splash it on their face, because people will. Just assume that it needs to be drinkable. A hand washing station consists of a clean enclosed container that holds drinkable water that has a spigot or valve that can be turned on and off. Reusable bottles of this kind can be purchased in glass or plastic for anywhere between $30 and $60. Soap, liquid or bar, doesn't matter. A gray water, so dirty, unpotable container to catch the water used to wash hands, single-use paper towels, and a covered trash container. Participants should wash their hands frequently, even if wearing gloves, and always before touching their face or eating. They need to wash their hands for at least 20 seconds. Hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizers are not an adequate substitute for hand washing. They do not eliminate all types of microbes, germs, viruses, etc., and they might not remove harmful chemicals. They are not effective when hands are visibly dirty, such as when one has been handling muddy items. However, if no soap and water are available, hand sanitizing is better than nothing. It needs to be at least 60% alcohol to be effective. Filtering water. Water potentially contaminated by flooding can also be filtered. This should only be done in an emergency situation when there is no other clean source of water, such as bottled water. Companies such as Livestraw, Sawyer, and Grail make filters that allow only water to pass through, and they remove 99.99% of suspended material, including most pathogens, bacteria, parasites, etc. Only some filters remove heavy metals, and only some remove viruses. Appropriately filtered water may be both used for hygiene and for drinking. Disinfecting water. Water potentially contaminated by flooding can also be disinfected. This should only be done in an emergency situation when there is no other clean source of water, such as bottled water. Please note, we teach an entire class on purifying and storing water. This is a super brief overview on this topic. This is not designed for long-term survivalism. We do encourage more in-depth learning on this if you think that there's any reason why your community would lose water for more than 2 weeks. Option 1. Water can be disinfected with liquid bleach. The water can then be used for drinking, cooking, and hygiene-related purposes. The bleach must be unscented, household chlorine bleach that contains 5.25% sodium hydrochloride. Do not use scented, do not use color safe, do not use any bleaches with added cleaners. If the water is clear, add 1/8 of a teaspoon of bleach for every 1 gallon, 16 cups of water. Stir it in thoroughly and let it stand for 30 full minutes. If the water is cloudy, add 1/4 teaspoon to the gallon of water. The disinfected water should smell like chlorine, like a pool. If it does not, repeat the dosage and let it stand for another 15 minutes before using. Store it in a sanitized, food-safe container. This method is not effective against certain parasites, including Critosporidium, which can be spread through floodwaters contaminated with infected animal or human waste. It also will not remove heavy metals from that water. Option 2. Water can be disinfected with chlorine or iodine tablets, which can be purchased from drug and sporting goods stores. You can buy them at REI. They're not expensive. These should be used according to their instructions. If they do not have instructions, a standard amount is 1 tablet for every quart of water that needs to be purified. Iodine, while effective at killing bacteria, viruses, and some parasites, does not effectively purify water against Critosporidium or Giardia, both of which can be spread through floodwaters contaminated with infected animal or human waste. Chlorine dioxide tablets are effective against Giardia, but not against Cryptosporidium. Neither iodine nor chlorine removes chemical contaminants or heavy metals. No one should drink water disinfected by iodine for more than a couple of weeks. It's not safe. This is a temporary solution until clean water comes to the site. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody know what the symptoms are for Giardia? Really horrific diarrhea. Really horrific. And not only can you get it, but if you get it, your animals can get it from you. If your animals get it, you can get it from your animals. Documentation. Oh, sorry. I skipped one. A note on UV purification. Portable units that purify water using ultraviolet light can kill parasites, bacteria, and viruses, but they can only purify very small amounts of water at a time. They can only purify already clean water. It can't have any silt in it or anything like that. Even small particles can block the germs from the light. Additionally, UV water sterilizers are really expensive and they break really easily. I'm not sure why all the prepper guys are like, you have to have a UV sterilizer, you have to have a UV sterilizer. I'm like, this is so much worse than just a filter. I don't understand. It doesn't help with heavy metals. It doesn't remove silt from the water. So it's still going to be dirty water, and if it is dirty water, it's not going to work. Anyway, documentation. Before I get into that, any questions on water purification?
No, although if we have time afterwards, we should tell the story about Giardia and animals and the possessed.
The time that I kept getting asked if I did exorcisms on cats?
That would be the one.
What?
For the record, I do provide exorcism services. Documentation. Before cleanup can begin, the damage needs to be documented. Clear pictures and videos of all damage need to be taken before any cleaning, fixing, or throwing out of anything. The pictures need to include both wide shots and close-ups of the walls, the floors, the furniture. You need to focus on water levels on the walls, furniture, and appliance, the structural damage to floors, ceilings, and foundations, and any damaged valuable items. This can be done with a phone camera, but you still need both wide-angle and close-up shots of everything. Record the serial numbers from electronics and appliances to support any insurance claims. Before cleaning up, take small samples that can help support insurance claims, such as pieces of damaged drywall, insulation, and carpet. Store these somewhere safe. These help prove the losses were necessary. If repairs are started before the claim is approved and the funds are released, keep all the receipts for all the repair costs and purchased items, including any equipment needed to be used for the mucking and the gutting. Make sure to keep both the paper copies and a digital backup, like take photos of the receipts and store them somewhere safe. Okay. Temporary weather barriers. Before I get into this, I want to make an offer to you. This is based on the EPA's videos on this topic. The videos for this, for the how to remove walls and the video for how to remove floors are linked in the notes, and they actually show people doing it. If you would prefer, I can put up the videos rather than go through the slides, or I can say the links are in the notes and you can watch those when you want to. Everyone good to continue learning from slides, or would some people prefer to watch the videos? Okay. I recommend that at some point you watch the videos, because some of the details on like how you put up the tarps might not be super clear to learn without an actual video demonstration, right? Okay. If the flooding has damaged the roof, broken windows, ripped off doors, or otherwise compromised the structure against additional weather concerns, participants may need to install temporary weather barriers. These can be tarps, plastic sheeting, or even construction house wrap. Placing these temporary weather barriers can be dangerous. If placing requires potentially dangerous activities such as climbing on a roof, the owner or the renter of a structure may wish to contact their local emergency management office to inquire about having weather barriers put up through the government disaster assistance programs. That doesn't always work. Like right now, with the flooding in our area, emergency funds weren't released for 10 days after the floods. So it really depends on how fast your area is moving on recognizing that the flooding is really bad. Does that make sense? If a person has to set up the barriers themselves, they may need to work with a partner. If using a ladder, the ladder must always be level or near level and held still by a partner. The person climbing a ladder needs to keep 3 points of contact with the ladder and wear a hard hat. If the area they are working on is steep or slippery, they should also use a harness to secure themselves from falling. No one should go onto a roof while the roof is still wet or it is still raining. While on the roof, they should clean off any debris from the flood. They should look for any visible damage and unroll the tarp over the damaged area. They should allow at least 1 foot of the tarp to hang over the edge of the roof. The tarp can be secured by wrapping it around a board and then securing the board to the roof with screws. Additional boards should be placed around the edges of the tarp and also screwed into place. The foot of the tarp hanging over the edge of the roof should then be wrapped up around another board and screwed in place under the siding, on the siding, underneath the roof. Everyone clear on what I mean? Okay. For windows, use plastic sheeting that blocks wind and rain, but ideally not light. Cover the window or door completely with the sheeting and wrap it around the frame. Tape it in place to secure it. This is why I recommended in your stuff that you roll out with double-sided containment tape, which combines a painter's tape adhesive on one side for adhering to surfaces like the window and the door frames, and a stronger adhesive on the other side for adhering to plastic sheeting. Barriers should also be set up between affected and unaffected areas of the structure. If the basement flooded, but the rest did not, plastic sheeting should be taped where the basement connects to the rest of the structure. If the first floor flooded, but the second floor did not, the plastic sheeting should be placed to protect the second floor, and so on. Plastic barriers reduce the spread of moisture and mold spores to unaffected areas. You want to keep that barrier up so that the air isn't just carrying mold to the rest of the belongings. Plastic sheeting can be taped all around the door as well as to the floor at the threshold of the door. The plastic sheeting should not be taut, but actually have some give. This can be accomplished by pleating it at the top several times. A vertical slit can then be cut at the center of the sheet to allow entry and exit from the room. The slit should stop 6 inches before the bottom of the door and 6 inches from the top of the door. The top and bottom of the slit can be reinforced with duct tape to prevent further tearing. I want to note here that I did not put this in my notes, and I should and need to go back and edit it in. If you are going to be going into the clean section of a house, you need to strip off your contaminated gear before you go in there. You should not carry like damp, moldy gear into the clean part of a house. That's kind of defeating the purpose of the barrier. Okay. Any questions on that? Moving on. Cleaning up. After documenting, the first step is to throw away anything that is an immediate health risk. This includes spoiled food, any animal carcasses, rotten plant debris, visibly molding soft items, clothing, cushions, pillows, blankets, etc., and anything else that is putrid, decaying, or moldering that is a danger to anyone participating in the cleanup efforts. Remove any other hazards from the property as well, including broken glass, pieces of construction material, etc. Removing standing water. Use caution when removing standing water from a structure. If the water is several feet deep, removing the water too quickly can cause structural damage, cracking the walls and the floor. This can cause structural collapse. If there are several feet of standing water, we recommend that the insurance be alerted and professionals be used to remove it safely with structural supports placed. They can actually brace a structure, pump it out slowly, and then remove those braces once everything has stabilized. If a professional is not available, a submersible pump may be used if electricity is safe to use, which can slowly pump the water out of the house. The water should not be pumped out until the surrounding floodwaters have receded. There's 2 reasons for this, which again, I should put in the notes. 1, if there's still flooding outside and you pump the water out, it's just going to come right back in. The second thing is that if the house is empty of flooded water, and then floodwaters are still pressing up against the foundation on the outside, it can crack the structure and collapse it. You've created a pressure differential. So, everyone clear? All right. Pumping out water. Pump out 1 foot of water. Mark the level and wait overnight. If the water level climbed overnight, it's too soon to start pumping out water and you need to wait. Wait another night, then pump out another foot of water, and once again mark the spot and wait overnight. Continue doing this until the water ceases climbing overnight. When the water stops climbing back overnight, pump out 2 to 3 feet of water, mark the level, wait overnight again. Continue pumping out 2 to 3 feet of water each day so long as it's not just flooding right back in, waiting overnight before starting again until all the standing water is removed. Less deep standing water can be removed with a shovel, bucket, sponges, mops, and squeegees. If electricity is safe to use, a wet vacuum may also be used. You vacuum up water, you go outside, you dump out the wet vac, you bring it back in, do it again. Obviously, don't use a pump if it's not safe to use power in the structure. Cool. Mucking. It is important to shovel out mud and silt before it dries and hardens. If it already has, you actually have to re-wet it, which seems really really contrary to the process of cleaning it from flooding, so use as little water as possible. Wall removal. If the floodwaters came up the walls and saturated them, the wall material may need to be removed. This should be done wearing appropriate protective gear, including work gloves, a hard hat, goggles, and a mask, ideally a respirator. Before removing the wall material, check the line left by the floodwaters. If the floodwaters came up less than 2.5 feet, the wall should be removed at a height of about 4 feet. If water rose more than 2.5 feet, the wall should be removed up to 8 feet or the ceiling, whichever comes first. Before removing the wall material, remove anything on the walls, light fixtures, faceplates of outlets, decorative items, etc. Wood molding, yes.
I'm gonna pause you for a minute and note that all of this is based on a modern frame construction home where the walls are drywall over pine studs. If you happen to live in an antique home with actual lath and plaster walls, these guidelines are all totally different. Or if you live in an industrial loft where everything is made of concrete or metal, these guidelines are all going to be different. This is the standard for the majority of new construction, single-family homes and apartment buildings.
Drywall sucks up water like you would not believe. You cannot salvage it. If it got saturated, it has to be gutted. We have lath and plaster walls in our house because it was built in 1890. Our house has flooded twice, and both times the people have been like, oh, we don't have to gut your walls. That's great. This is amazing. We can just set up fans. Anyway, moving right along.
You run wood molding.
Wood molding, baseboards, crown molding, paneling, etc. can often be cleaned, dried out, and salvaged. Cut any caulk holding it in place and gently tap a pry bar behind the molding to loosen it, then use a crowbar or hammer bar to remove it from the walls. Remove any protruding nails and screws so that they're not cutting you or any other volunteers. Kitchen cabinets will need to be removed if the water climbed the walls behind them. To remove the wall. Kitchen cabinets can be cleaned, dried, and put back only if they are made of durable materials, like wood. But if the kitchen cabinets were made of engineered wood, fiberboard, or artificial materials, they may absorb water, warp, and mold. If it's like Walmart level, IKEA level, that has to get thrown out. It is not salvageable. You can only save the cabinets that have been saturated by water if they are made of like actual wood. Okay? Any of you know how to check? Alright. You can Google that if you need to, how to tell if cabinets are made of real wood. They will be heavier. If the power is still on in the structure, turn off the power at the breaker to any area the wall is being removed from at that time. This is to prevent accidental electrocution if contact is made with electrical wiring while cutting or prying out the wall material. Cut the drywall loose with a drywall knife or reciprocating saw, the blade of which has been adjusted to the thickness of the wall so that it doesn't cut into wiring or into the studs behind the drywall. Remove the pieces of the wall in large chunks and place them in a sturdy, large disposable bag. Remove any nails or screws from the studs, and any saturated insulation material must also be removed, again in sturdy, large disposable bags. Wear a mask while handling insulation. I mean, wear a mask through the entire process anyway, but breathing insulation fibers can also be dangerous, in addition to breathing in what the floodwaters have left behind. Clean and dry the inside of the walls before replacing the insulation and putting in new wall material. Any questions on that? Does anyone want to watch the 2-minute long video, or do you feel comfortable? Okay. Floor removal. I should also note here that removing your ceiling, if you have to in a room, is basically the same as removing the walls, so long as it is made of drywall. If flooring is saturated by floodwaters, it may need to be salvaged or discarded. This should be done wearing, again, appropriate protective gear. The flooring may be able to be cleaned and salvaged if it is made from tile, wood, or stone. It still likely needs to be fully removed from the subfloor, cleaned and dried, and the subfloor beneath it cleaned and dried as well before reinstallation can occur. If the flooring is carpet, it may not be able to be salvaged. All the padding, all the tack strips, all of it needs to be discarded. Rugs can sometimes be salvaged if they can be thoroughly washed and dried quickly, but not if they are left to mold for more than 24 to 48 hours. If it's a wool rug, you probably have the 48 hours. You probably have that long to work on getting it cleaned out. And there's professional wool rug restoration places if it's a valuable rug that you really want to care for. Ian and I have a bunch of antique rugs. Anyway. Vinyl, linoleum, and laminate flooring may need to be disposed of because they will warp if they got wet. Engineered wood flooring may only be salvageable if the flooding wasn't particularly severe. However, severely damaged flooding, especially after prolonged exposure to water, may require complete replacement regardless of what material it was made from. Concrete flooring can generally just be cleaned and dried. If you have a concrete subfloor, that's like ideal for being able to get it really dry. If the subfloor is made of plywood, that whole subfloor has to come out. Baseboards may need to be removed before the floors can be assessed. It is best to leave the flooring remediation until after the rest of the cleaning process has been completed, all the other debris removed, items that have been thrown out had been removed from the house, etc. It just makes it easier. If you're going to be removing all the flooring, you don't want to have to be going around a couch. So, I already said if the subfloor is made of manufactured fiberboard or plywood, that will also likely have to be discarded and replaced. If vinyl flooring is found beneath the flooring that dates between 1920 to the very early 1990s, that may contain asbestos. This will need to be professionally identified and remediated. Improper asbestos removal can cause lung cancer and mesothelioma. Props to anyone who remembers those advertisements. Before replacing any flooring, the area must be thoroughly cleaned and dried. Okay, any questions? Crawl spaces and attics. Crawl spaces must also be addressed to complete the remediation of a structure. Removing the flooring often grants access to crawl spaces, but not always. All saturated materials should be removed from the area, including insulation. Any remaining water needs to be removed. The area needs to be thoroughly cleaned and dried, just like all the other areas in the house. If the crawl space breeds mold, it will spread from there to the rest of the house. Vapor retardant plastic sheeting should be placed back into the crawl space once it is dry and held in place with land scrape fabric pins. Attics generally only need to be fully remediated if the moisture got in from a damaged roof or if the house was deeply flooded, like all the way up to the attic. They are approached the same way as any other room, with all water-saturated materials removed and everything cleaned and dried before anything can be replaced. Yes?
Something that just occurred to me we should put in here. A lot of people are starting to have their crawl spaces encapsulated, meaning that someone goes in and puts what is nominally a waterproof vapor barrier on every surface of the crawl space. Theoretically, this prevents you from having to worry about
This.
In practice, if it floods and water comes up under that and bursts it, then you actually have a worse mess because you have a bunch of places where the water can't escape normally.
Encapsulation actually isn't recommended in environments that have really heavy rains and flooding because the water actually gets underneath the barrier that they install and then it can't dry out. But I'm aware that it gets really pushed out here. People are like, oh, it's so humid and there's so many pest pressures and things. You want to get fully vapor sealed. But we talked to several more honest contractors of our acquaintance who basically walked us through the dangers of having that in a high flood risk environment. Anyway, lead paint. If the structure was constructed prior to 1978, it may contain lead paint. If that lead paint becomes aerosolized during cleanup activities, it can damage a person's health. If lead paint is suspected, perform material testing and do not disturb the material unless it is confirmed not to contain lead. If testing confirms lead is present, remediation must be performed in accordance with all the applicable state and federal regulations. You may be able to do it yourself if you're willing to, but you still have to follow all the rules when you do so, both to protect your own health and to protect the environment. Mold. Mold is a major concern after flooding. Breathing or touching mold can lead to skin and eye irritation, infections, and can cause and worsen respiratory illness, ailments, and diseases. If a structure could not be dried within 24 to 48 hours, it should just be assumed that there is mold. If an area is visibly damp, it should be assumed that there may be mold spores present already, even if they cannot yet be seen or smelled. Mold may also be visible or able to be smelled within 48 hours of flooding. Mold can grow on soft items, clothing, bedding, stuffed animals, stuffed furniture, carpets, etc., but also on books, walls, under flooring, under tiles, inside of grout, etc. Just because black mold isn't visible doesn't mean that there isn't mold present. There are 3 steps to remediating mold. First, remove all the water from the structure. Secondly, completely dry everything as detailed. Thirdly, clean up any moldy objects. When cleaning mold, always wear gloves, goggles, and a mask, ideally a respirator. If an item can be laundered, mold can be removed from it by washing it in hot water with a laundry detergent or washing it in cold water if the item will not tolerate hot water, so long as a mold-killing substance is added to the laundry. Borax, oxygen bleach, a biocidal soap, etc. The EPA has multiple biocidal soaps available, or you can just use OxyClean. That is fine for sheets, blankets, the clothing in the closet, etc. You can use OxyClean for. If an item is non-porous and can be cleaned, mold may be removed from it. This should be done gently to avoid spreading mold spores. This first cleaning should be done with a household detergent and water. Then surfaces can be treated with an EPA-registered disinfectant that treats mold. Examples of EPA-registered mold killers include Concrobium Mold Control, a professional-grade bleach-free product that eliminates mold and prevents its regrowth. Mold Armor, a bleach-free, acid-free mold remover and disinfectant. RMR 141 RTU disinfectant, a multi-purpose biocide that kills over 141 microorganisms, including bacteria, viruses, mold, and mildew. vital oxide, a hospital disinfectant and mold control product that is effective against a wide range of molds, mildews, fungi, spores, and even yeasts. All the products should be used according to the instructions that they come with all the safety precautions indicated. Always use them with proper ventilation and while wearing the proper protective gear. No biocide is ever fully effective unless the structure is adequately dried. It is not possible to sterilize an entire area with a biocide. No surface application of biocide can kill airborne mold spores. Spores will remain in an area and will grow if the moisture problem has not been resolved. Additionally, dead mold can still trigger allergic reactions in some people, so just killing it isn't adequate. It must be fully removed by cleaning up all the areas that are moldy. Foam cleaning and pressure washing. All the surfaces in a house will likely need to be cleaned, including the studs and the concrete subfloor, as well as any non-upholstered furniture that people want to retain. Foam cleaning is more effective than repeatedly spraying and wiping, as foam allows cleaning products to cling to surfaces long enough for the chemicals to kill microbes, including mold and bacteria. Foam cleaning also reduces the amount of water used, which helps the drying process go faster. Air-operated motorized foam generators are very effective at spraying large areas very quickly. The foam should be allowed to sit undisturbed for 3 to 5 minutes, according to the minimum dwell time given on the label of any of the EPA-registered products being used. Then the surfaces can be scrubbed with cleaning cloths or with a brush. However, air-operated motorized foam generators cost between $1,000 and $2,000. Yen and I found one last night that was being resold as $750. That's the cheapest we could find one.
Also, for some reason, our images of foam cleaning vanished, which is annoying.
Yeah, especially after all the work you put in to find those. And they're wearing proper PPE. Annoying. Anyway, if an Action Collective wants to acquire one, they'd likely have to pool their money. I'm going to note here, I'm going to get into OxyClean in a minute, but OxyClean makes a spray foam cleaner. It is effective against mold. Now, buying lots and lots and lots of bottles of that's going to rack up to $1,000 anyway, but it is an option for smaller areas. The foam left over on surfaces can be rinsed off with... That also had an image of someone using a pressure washer wearing proper protective gear. The foam left over on surfaces can be rinsed off with clean water. The fastest and most efficient method for this is actually to use a pressure washer set at low pressure so that the spray is limited to a light mist. Squeegee mops are also good for wiping down surfaces quickly without allowing a lot of water to remain. Wet vacuums can also be used to collect the water if there is access to power. Don't leave the water behind to dry. Get the water out. Okay. The problems with bleach. Bleach can only kill mold when it has direct contact with a non-porous surface. Additionally, its effectiveness at killing bacteria and mold is reduced when there is any residual dirt, as there often is in flooded homes. It is generally not the best biocide for mold killing. Those are the EPA-registered ones. Bleach can be okay at removing surface molds, but OSHA and the EPA still don't recommend bleach for mold remediation. Bleach is corrosive, especially to wood, and it can cause disintegration by breaking down wood fibers. It can also corrode metal surfaces. If it comes in contact with electrical components and other metal parts of mechanical systems, it can corrode them badly enough to break them down. And bleach water also compromises the effectiveness of termite treatments. Cleaning with bleach can be dangerous if it combines with other cleaning chemicals, which may cause a reaction that release harmful gases into the structure. Never combine bleach and ammonia. Molds have deep roots in porous surfaces that bleach cannot reach. Bleach is generally sold in a dilute form that is over 90% water, so once the chlorine evaporates, the water is left behind and can soak into porous surfaces and make the mold problem worse. Diluted bleach is acceptable for cleaning plastic items such as household, like children's toys, like Legos and things, and that's basically it. Household remedies. Although we have seen claims that vinegar is a very effective household cleaner against mold because it kills approximately 80 to 82% of mold species, these claims are very misleading. There is no scientific study that has found vinegar to kill 80 to 82% of mold species. I don't know where that number is coming from. It is not coming from a scientific study. Although it does possess antifungal and antibacterial properties, due to its low pH, it isn't effective against some of the most common mold species found in homes, including Aspergillus fumigatus, which can cause severe infections in immunocompromised individuals. one of the species of mold that is likely to be in a flooded home. It doesn't kill. So, oxygen bleach, also called hydrogen peroxide, does kill mold on non-porous and somewhat porous materials. It cannot penetrate deeply enough to kill mold inside cushions, for example, but it can kill mold on a wood table. If the porous material can be washed in a clothes washer, oxygen bleach, hydrogen peroxide can be added to the wash to kill mold spores. When cleaning with oxygen bleach, a person should wear adequate PPE. If cleaning mold with oxygen bleach, the person should wear gloves, a mask or respirator, and goggles. A person can purchase an oxygen bleach-based household cleaner like OxyClean, which makes convenient foaming sprays that stick to vertical surfaces, or they can mix their own. 3% hydrogen peroxide, the standard percentage that is sold in pharmacies, can be put into a spray bottle and misted onto a moldy surface. It should be left to sit for 10 minutes and then gently washed off. It should not be used on surfaces that can be damaged by hydrogen peroxide like metal, ivory, or unsealed wood. It should never be combined with ammonia, rubbing alcohol, bleach, or other cleaning agents because it can produce harmful fumes or explode. Like any other cleaner, hydrogen peroxide will only be effective if the moisture problem is solved or the mold will just come back. Other household remedies we've seen suggested include, but are not limited to, lemon juice, baking soda, and fire. These are not effective. Firstly, and finally, don't cover mold. Clean it up and prevent it from returning. We have seen it suggested that people just paint or caulk over mold, but this will not prevent mold from growing or from spreading. Fix the moisture problem and clean up all the mold before paint and caulk are applied. If the person living or working in the structure that has been remediated starts having respiratory problems, including asthma or allergies getting worse, that may indicate that the mold wasn't fully remediated. They should consult a professional mold remediator to identify the source and complete the remediation. Okay, any questions on that? Drying out the structure. Before putting the floors and the walls and all the furniture back in and everything, it needs to be thoroughly dried out. Large furniture items may need to be removed from the house to ensure that it completely dries out. Cabinets may need to be removed for adequate airflow to the walls behind them. They may be able to be salvaged, as we covered, if they are made from durable materials. They would then need to be cleaned, dried, and rehung. The amount of time it takes to dry out a structure may vary depending on the humidity levels. Indoor humidity levels should be kept between 30 and 60%. The more humid it is, the longer it will take everything to adequately dry. And like today, when we have 95% humidity, it's gonna take 6 days or longer. Drying out a room can take anywhere from a couple of days or 6 weeks. Like it's going to take the longer end. If electricity is available in a structure, fans can be used and dehumidifiers can be used, which will both improve the process and speed it up. Do not use fans if there's visible mold, because the fan may spread the mold spores to other damp areas, causing the mold to spread. It also worsens the chances of inhaling the mold spores, which can be dangerous. Fans should be placed at windows or doors to blow the air outwards rather than inwards. If the HVAC system is working and not contaminated by floodwater, which may need to be evaluated by an HVAC technician, it can be turned on to help air movement dry out the structure. If the HVAC system was flooded with water, a mold-contaminated HVAC system will spread mold spores through the entire house. Professional cleaning is required to kill the mold. It should not be relied on in place of fans and humidifiers, but it can be used in addition to them, so long as it's safe to turn it on. If the electricity is not on in a structure, but there is no standing water remaining, a portable generator can be used to power fans and dehumidifiers. Please see the safety section, which we're going to get into in a minute. Doors and windows should be open to encourage adequate airflow so long as the outdoor weather permits. Obviously, don't open the doors and windows if it's raining outside. Materials may feel dry to the touch and still be damp. To determine if it is safe to reinstall the flooring, the walls, the cabinets, etc., and bring back in the furnishings, use a moisture meter to check. To use a moisture meter, place the prongs of the meter against the material. It should read as 15% or less before the structure is put back together and furnishings are brought back in. Moisture meters cannot adequately read concrete. They just can't. If there is concrete flooring, tape a sheet of plastic onto the concrete using painter's tape and wait for 16 hours. If moisture accumulates under the plastic, the concrete floor needs more time to dry out. Do not replace flooring, not even like plywood flooring, onto a concrete subfloor that is not completely dry. Okay. Other concerns. Mosquito populations often suddenly increase after a flood due to the availability of stagnant standing water, which they require for breeding. As floodwaters recede, be sure to drain and overturn areas that hold water, even if it seems like a very shallow amount, to reduce mosquito breeding areas. As we already mentioned, mosquitoes are the second deadliest animal on Earth after humans. They cause over 1 million deaths annually. We also recommend using mosquito dunks, sustained release products that float on water and release a long-term larvicide on the water's surface, which must be eaten by the mosquito larvae to be effective. A dunk will work for 30 days or longer. They do not harm animals in the area. It is safe for birds, cats, dogs, and deer, etc. to go ahead and drink the water, and it doesn't harm bees or butterflies or moths either. They can be placed in water sources that the person does not wish to drain, like bird baths, water gardens, etc., or a dedicated bucket can be placed outside with the water as a trap to attract them to lay their eggs there and have them be killed. They sell them at the garden store that's like 3 blocks away. They're really inexpensive, they last for a long time, and if we can all be working on reducing the mosquito population without misting the environment with insecticides, that's best. Power equipment. Never turn the power on or off on any electrical tool or appliance if you are standing in water. Where are our images?
I don't know.
Has it been a lot of them that don't have the images?
It's been the 3 and this one.
You want to refresh the slides and see if that helps?
Sure. One moment, everyone. Really? Okay, you know what? Just for that,
You're going to scroll back.
where'd you go?
Foam cleaning.
Foam cleaner. Foam cleaner. Person power washing. Now I'm gonna go back forward.
Yes, you had a question.
While we're on the bug topic, I wanted to say that something that happened after Helene was after the floods, a lot of like wasps and those types of insects, their nests were like disturbed, and they were going around angry, and people it was like swarming like people, and then we had like a call for like any kind of bug spray, anything that would like help with hornets and wasps and stuff like that after floods. That's
Yeah.
something that came up.
All insect and animal populations are going to be disturbed.
Yeah.
And there's often snake issues, and it's a mess. I should add a section actually for all of this before the next time I teach it on wasps and things.
Yeah, because then they were like looking to us to provide all kinds of, insect relief, medicine, and sprays and stuff like that.
Yeah, we actually have a whole herbalism practicum class and first aid class on insect stings. Because of how common it is while you're doing any kind of work out in the
Right.
to get stung. But it's a major concern if yellow jacket nests are disturbed or something like that, because they'll kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
And also in our area, we have water moccasins to look out for as like poisonous.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of concerns with insects and animals that have been disturbed, and also they will sometimes hide in a house that has been flooded. And so as you're cleaning things out, if you're opening drawers and things, that is a concern. Okay. Do not connect a generator to a structure's electrical circuits without an approved automatic interrupt device. If the generator is on the line when electric service is restored to a structure, that can become a fire hazard. This is if you're hooking the generator up to power the house. There is a specific interrupt device that basically turns off the generator if power is restored to the house. And without it, there is a fire risk. Okay? If power to a structure was turned off because water got into the electrical circuits, do not connect a generator to that structure. It's not like, oh, well, it's not safe to use the house's power, I'll just plug in this generator. If it's unsafe to use the house's power, it's unsafe to plug the generator in. Only connect a generator to a house that has not had floodwaters affect its electrical circuits, such as in cases where flooding has wiped out municipal power, but the structure itself is still safe to have electricity. A portable generator should be set up at least 20 feet away from the structure if using diesel fuel. Some generators use other fuels and can be closer to the structure, approximately 5 feet from it. Each generator will come with manufacturer's instructions on safe distances. Some can be as close as 18 inches from the wall of a structure, so long as they are 5 feet from an open door or window. It should never be used while the people inside the structure are sleeping, and it should never be refueled when hot. Prevent carbon monoxide poisoning by not using generators and or any other device powered by combustion, gasoline, propane, natural gas, charcoal, etc. inside a structure, the home, the basement, the garage, the camper, etc., or near an open window, door, or vent. The fumes can poison people inside the structure. Always use these items with adequate ventilation. If using a chainsaw, follow all the manufacturer's instructions and wear appropriate specialized protective gear. Make sure to stay a safe distance from others, avoid contact with power lines, take extra care when cutting materials that are entangled or caught in or around something else so that those materials do not fall on you. If using an electric chainsaw rather than a gas-powered one, be extra careful to avoid electric shock. Do not stand in water while operating an electric chainsaw, not even very shallow puddles. There's a thorough guide on chainsaw usage available on the CDC's website. I have the link in the notes. If using a pressure washer, follow all the manufacturer's instructions and wear appropriate specialized protective gear, especially extremely durable gloves and boots. Pressure washers can cause serious wounds that can appear kind of minor at first. Do not ever point the pressure washer at yourself or another person. My cousin Joshua used a pressure washer wearing flip-flop once. I'm sure that you can guess what happened to his toes. If using an electric pressure washer rather than a gas-powered one, be extra careful to avoid electric shock. Do not stand in water while using an electric chainsaw, not even shallow puddles. Gas-powered pressure washers can cause carbon monoxide poisoning and should only be used in well-ventilated environments. I'm aware that people are like, oh, well, I'll just use a gas-powered chainsaw. Just use a gas-powered. Yeah, if you're not inside. Debris, trash, and waste removal. Mucking and gutting generate a truly enormous amount of waste, including debris from the flood itself, portions of the structure that have to be removed because they were too saturated to keep, and all the items in a structure that cannot be salvaged. Additionally, the cleaning materials used may produce waste that has to be carefully disposed of. First, find out how the community the structure is located in is handling debris, trash, and waste removal by contacting the local waste management and or emergency management office. Each state and county may have its own restrictions on how they want things separated, bagged, and labeled. This is a basic guide. It's applicable in most counties, but there's always that one that's just a pain and they want things done differently. If the local government is not handling the removal, it may be necessary to rent a dumpster, haul materials to a local waste management site, or hire contractors to remove everything. A community can potentially split the cost of this if multiple homes in an area are affected. Debris that a person wants removed should be placed outside, away from the main structure, on the curb, but not blocking sidewalks or the road. Please don't block the sidewalks. There are people who really depend on sidewalks being accessible. I get really, really angry when I see people with those pavement princess trucks blocking sidewalks. Debris should be separated into categories to make it easier for municipal services to collect. The debris categories are electronics, televisions, computers, laptops, stereos, etc., as well as their cords, large appliances, refrigerators, washers, dryers, air conditioners, stoves, dishwashers, etc. Hazardous waste, cleaning chemicals, pesticides, compressed gas, batteries, including lithium-ion batteries, paint, motor oil, gasoline, etc. Vegetative debris, fallen branches, logs, etc. Construction debris, drywall, flooring, carpet, furniture, mattresses, etc. Household garbage, bagged food, paper, packaging, and small household items that do not belong in any of the other categories. Special notes on chemical disposal. Hazardous waste should always be separated from what goes into a dumpster or truck headed to the dump and handled according with how that waste is addressed in the area where the structure is located. Hazardous waste includes cleaning chemicals like bleach, pesticides, compressed gas, batteries, paint, motor oil, gasoline and other fuels, fluorescent lights, and any materials containing lead or asbestos. If you're talking about like 1 tablespoon of bleach diluted in a gallon of water, you can dump that down the drain. I mean, you cannot dump undiluted bleach down a drain. Do not handle hazardous waste without proper protective gear, including chemical-resistant gloves, goggles, and a mask and respirator. Ideally, anyone handling hazardous waste would also be wearing a chemical protection suit, made by Tyvek, for example. Do not dispose of hazardous chemicals by pouring them onto the ground outside, onto storm drains, down the drains in the house, or into our local waterways. Leaking containers may cause fires. Leave damaged, leaking, or unlabeled chemical containers undisturbed if possible. If it is not possible to leave it undisturbed, collect it very carefully while wearing protective gear and isolate it away from flammable materials or things that might spark, like damaged batteries. So you might actually wind up with 2 hazardous waste piles. The one's like, this is leaking. We are keeping this away from other things. Do not allow children or pets to come into contact with the chemicals, and contact the local waste authority for guidance on or for having them collected. Okay. Everyone good on that? Moving into salvaging, trying to save what you can? Yes.
This is on this topic too, and I don't know if you got anything to say about this, but one thing that people encountered during this last flood is that the people that were doing the mucking and gutting put all the salvageable stuff, on the side of the road. But then there's people that look for disasters, and then they go and they raid kind of like the piles. And so here the volunteers were trying to help, and then the victims really, they're freaking out because there's people that are there that are taking their items.
And you have to get it out of the house in order to properly remediate the house.
Right.
That's so awful.
Yeah.
Of all the people to target to take their things, the people who have lost practically everything they own.
And the other workers that were there said that they had encountered this already in previous natural disasters and stuff. So I've been thinking about ways to kind of address that.
Right, because you can't have a guard there the whole time.
I was gonna say, get a blocker.
The places with property managers, we were able in Camelot to get them to provide pods. It just,
at Camelot,
they just took time, and the members of that community that were had less capacity for self-advocacy had to wait longer for the pods. We had one guy who wouldn't leave his house because he couldn't get his stuff out of the house for a week because he kept not being able to get pods. We had to put everything out on the yard, and then it rained every night for 2 weeks, so we had to go put it in someone's carport because the property manager was like, well, oops. So
we might want to start working on a talk to go to storage areas.
Yeah.
And basically be like, hey, will you donate use of storage units?
That's what ended up happening, I think, for a lot of folk. But yeah, it was really frustrating.
That's horrific. I'm gonna gnaw on that and see if I can think of any solutions. I'm so angry right now.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Okay. Salvaging. Items that are made from non-porous materials can be more easily salvaged than those made of porous materials. These include items made from metal, plastic, glass, and ceramic. These items can be carried to an area out of the way and left to clean until after more urgent items are salvaged first. Items made of materials that do not absorb a large amount of water may also be more easily salvaged, including hardwood, not engineered wood, particle board, or plywood, but actual hardwood, marble, unglazed ceramic, bricks, concrete, real lime plaster, unsealed granite, and some other stones, soapstone for example. This includes building material like hardwood floors, paneling, hardwood cabinets, countertops made of stone, etc. These may be able to be salvaged and need to be cleaned sooner than non-porous materials, but still can wait until you tackle the really urgent things. When deciding what items to keep from these materials, a cost and benefit analysis must be made to determine how damaged the items are, how difficult it will be to clean and repair them, and the cost to repair or just replace them. Porous materials will have to be dealt with the most quickly and the most aggressively. Large porous items such as mattresses, upholstered furniture, and carpets just may not be salvageable. That's probably just a gutted. If someone has like a purple mattress, anyone familiar with those? Those are water resistant. You could keep something like that, but you can't keep the average memory foam mattress or the average regular mattress. It can be difficult to salvage everything that a person may want to save, especially as the longer the items remain wet, the harder it is to restore them. Prioritize the most essential items that a person wants to save and work on those first. The contents of closets, cabinets, drawers, and containers that were not watertight should be gently removed and sorted. Photographs should be removed from damp albums, paperwork should be removed from damp file folders, and pictures should be removed from frames, etc. Items may be more fragile when damp and should be handled with extra special care. People pulling items out should be wearing protective gear, not just to protect against mold and the bacteria and fluid waters, but also because the items themselves may be leaking, off-gassing, or otherwise harmful, or again, there might be insects or animals. Damp materials should be separated from dry ones and then separated again into what is being saved and what is being discarded. Small, porous fabric and textile items may be laundered either at home or professionally if a local dry cleaner offers mold remediation. Not all do. Only some will take items that were in a flood. Papers and photographs can be gently placed on an art drying rack or clipped to a clothesline and left to dry in front of a box fan, ideally indoors. If an art drying rack or clothesline isn't available, they can be individually laid out flat on absorbent materials like paper or fabric towels or dish drying mats, or on a screen. Clean window screens are fine for this, and left to dry near a dehumidifier. If done this way, they need to gently, periodically be turned over. The picture side of a photograph should not be in contact with anything until it has dried. So if you take the picture side of a photograph and you lay that down on another piece of paper while it's wet, you're probably going to lose that photograph. Okay. Books may be dried by putting absorbent paper towels between each page. I really like the blue paper towels that they sell at construction stores. Any of you familiar with those? They're extra absorbent, and they pull a lot more moisture out of book pages. If small items cannot be salvaged in 48 hours, they can be frozen until they can be dealt with. This will preserve them until they can be appropriately dried. Antique or heirloom items may require professional restoration. A person may be able to find a professional conservator through the American Institute for Conservation. They may also be able to contact the Conservation and Preservation Department of local museums, libraries, or archives to ask for advice or recommendation. There is also a volunteer group of preservation and conservation experts called the National Heritage Responders, administered by the Foundation for Advancement in Conservation, who provide advice for people after disasters. Individuals can email them directly, and cultural institutions can actually call their emergency helpline. The Preservation Directorate of the Library of Congress also has a list of emergency web pages of institutions that can assist people, communities, and institutions with damaged art and artifacts. We highly recommend that everyone who is trying to salvage materials in a structure read the Flood Recovery Booklet, compiled and edited by Nancy E. Kraft and Elizabeth M. Sampson, created by the Iowa Conservation and Preservation Consortium. It's very thorough. It goes into a lot more detail than I've just run through here. It's the same steps, but like way more information on them, and it goes into some things I didn't touch on, like what to do if it's stretched canvas. Okay. Getting experts involved. It may not be safe or possible for the structure to be remediated without expert help. A person attempting to remediate a structure should be careful to choose a qualified, reliable company. They should get multiple estimates in writing. They must always check for licensing and for insurance. They should talk to their insurance provider for recommendations, and always before signing a contract or submitting any payment. When working with an insurance adjuster, the person should check their identification and ask for their flood control number to ensure that they are an authorized representative who can actually work on their claim. There's so many scams out there for this. And not even just for this. Yen and I did everything you're supposed to do when we hired contractors to work on the house that we bought for Sanctum to operate out of. Like we checked their licensing, we got local recommendations from the historic district that our house is operated in, we checked with our insurance recommended the company, and we still got had. And we got had to the tune of $50,000. So you can take all these steps and still have someone be predatory and take advantage. So minimally take these steps. People need to be wary of scams. If a company asks for full payment before starting, that's a bad sign. Ideally, communities should make a list of people the community has had good experience with and a list of known scammers. Experts offering mold inspection and remediation should be affiliated with or certified by the National Environmental Health Association, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, or American Council for Accredited Certification to inspect, repair, and restore a home after flooding. There may be state or county regulations that are specific to an area that the remediation has to abide by, and you want someone who can actually do that. We do not recommend paying for expensive sampling to determine exactly what species of mold is growing. Regardless of what kind of mold is growing, it has to be eliminated, and the only way to do that is to get rid of the moisture problem. Those tests are expensive and unnecessary. A biocide like an EPA approved biocide should kill any mold problem that you're having. But really, it's the moisture that has to get tackled. Funding for recovery. Some people may qualify for up to $30,000 to rebuild in ways that will reduce their flood risk in the future through increased cost of compliance coverage. This should be discussed with the insurance adjuster or agent for the flood and or for the home insurance. Decontamination once you are home. Presuming the person mucking and gutting is staying separate from the structure, any single-use items that were used for cleanup should be trashed at the site of the flooded structure, not taken to where they are staying. Don't take your bags of trash home with you. Don't take them to the hotel where someone is staying. Keep the trash at the site, because if there is any kind of government assistance for cleaning up the trash, that's where they're coming to get it. And additionally, you don't want to carry mold and bacteria and stuff home with you. If a volunteer is helping with cleanup, I already said that. All reusable tools should be cleaned as soon as possible, according to the same steps as covered in the earlier portions. Just like you would clean the cabinets, the wood molding, etc. Soap and water, a mold killing material of some kind, EPA approved, OxyClean, etc., and then thoroughly dry. Tools should ideally be decontaminated at the site rather than put dirty back into a vehicle. If that is not possible, they should at least be rinsed and dried and then taken home on plastic sheeting to prevent them from touching the upholstery in a vehicle. Boots and work gloves can be cleaned with the appropriate soap during the decontamination of the rest of the gear and then ideally set in front of a fan to dry. Respirators should also be cleaned. The filters should generally be changed every 3 months or after 400 hours of use, whichever comes first, but you should check your manufacturer's specific guidance just in case. After getting home and after decontaminating their gear, the person should immediately put their clothing in the wash with oxygen bleach. OxyClean powder is very inexpensive. You can buy a gigantic box of it for like $10 at Costco. And thoroughly wash and dry their clothing. This must be done separately from any other household laundry. Any clothing that was exposed to hazardous contaminant, asbestos, lead, unknown chemicals, etc., should be bagged in a sealed bag and exposed of as hazardous waste according to how that waste should be disposed of. Do not bring asbestos-contaminated clothing into a home. The person should dampen their clothing with clean water and peel the clothing off as carefully as possible, trying not to shake the fabric while wearing a respirator, and put it still wet into a bag and seal it closed. They should shower as soon as possible before they take their mask off. Okay, regardless of whether it's asbestos or anything else, the volunteer or the participant should go and wash themselves in a shower with plenty of soap and running water, making sure all parts of their body are washed with at least 20 seconds of scrubbing. Not 20 seconds for the whole body, 20 seconds for each part. 20 seconds on your hands, 20 seconds on your face, 20 seconds on a forearm, 20 seconds on the next forearm, and so on, until the entire body is scrubbed. This is the length of time it takes to kill bacteria and viruses that are on a part of your body. If there are any cuts or sores on the person's body while they are doing the cleanup, they should be washed gently with soap and water as well. Once the person is done showering and dry, antimicrobial ointment such as petroleum jelly and a bandage should be applied, and the wound should be monitored for signs of infection. The person should monitor their health for signs of respiratory ailments developing for the next several weeks after assisting with the cleanup. Okay, some resources for all of you. The FEMA library at fema.gov/library has extensive guides to remediation after various natural disasters. The National Flood Insurance Program has a website with guides on flood risks, on how insurance works after flood, and what to do before and after a flood. It can be found at floodsmart.gov, or they can be called if you want advice from their hotline. The CDC has an extensive portion of its site dedicated to education on natural disasters, which can be found at cdc.gov/naturaldisasters/index.html. And the EPA also has an extensive guide on dealing with a flooded home, with many helpful videos that we highly recommend people watch, which can be found at epa.gov/flooded-homes. This class was based on those resources, as well as everything in the bibliography, which is here in case you want it. Okay? One of the reasons we put this together is that they all covered slightly different information. This covered from all of it, from all of them. Additionally, I have some concerns that that information may go away. Okay. While we are still recording, does anyone have questions? Yes.
If you could mention how to properly fit respirators so that you're not thinking like with gloves, thinking that you're safe when you're not.
It should seal. Like, there shouldn't be any gap between the respirator and your face. And when you move your face to talk to someone, it shouldn't lift anywhere. It shouldn't unseal when you're talking. If you're like shifting around and stuff and it's moving on your face at all, it is not properly fitted.
What are your thoughts on I think they make paint that is supposed to be either like a fungicide or like mold resistant or something?
If you've already treated for mold, then using that paint is a great step to take. There's mold resistant primers, mildew resistant primers, there's stain and odor resistant primers. That's great as a step, but it shouldn't be done until the moisture reader is reading at under 15% and under, and all the mold has been remediated. They're not effective to the point where you can skip the other steps. They're just an additional thing that can help. Anyone ever lived in a house with nicotine stains that someone treated with that? It just beads up through it anyway.
I didn't know that it bleeds through.
It can.
Wow.
During a really dark time in my life, I was staying in a really bad place where the landlord had treated the whole house with that kind of paint for paint odors and nicotine odors. Apparently, the people who'd lived there before were hoarders, and everything was covered in nicotine stains. And little pinpricks of yellow seeping liquid would bead up and seep through it anyway. And when we told him, he was like, "That's not possible. I used this stuff." And it's like, well, it's happening. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So, yeah. Okay. Any other? All right. Next week, we are going to cover treating cuts and abrasions because of how often cuts and abrasions happen when doing this work. So we're doing that one first. We do have a bleed model that we will be bringing out for the end of class for teaching how to handle a really big abrasion. Hopefully no one will ever be in the point where they're having to wound pack someone because they got ripped open on rebar during a flood. But let's address it anyway. And then I will talk with Ruma about next month and what structure of classes is going to be and what we want to touch on. If there's any requests out of our syllabus, we can always move something forward if you all feel it is particularly relevant. But the next one's going to be on abrasions because of that being a major concern during this work. All right. If there's no further questions, I'm going to turn off the recording and then I'm going to show you all a gear set, mine specifically.